face.
Well, hello, pop culture nerds. Today we're joined by one of our favorite actors who's fought demons, dealt with aliens, and plays one hell of a cop. You can find her in Telltale's new Tales from the Borderlands and Hallmark's A Picture of Her. We are honored to welcome Sam Ferris. Welcome to the show, Sam.
Sam Ferris. Now, for anybody watching this, I have to say this. I did not put any makeup on today. I have a sunburn on my nose. I didn't even cover that up. My hair is everywhere. I thought it was just going to be audio, and I was wrong. I don't know modern technology. Call me old. So this is what you get. This is what I look like at my worst. So it only gets better than this. This is me straight out of bed.
Which you're so hard on yourself because
I know.
Yeah. I wear a hat.
Every actor is hard on themselves.
The reason I wear this hat is because there's literally no hair underneath it. So at least you've got the hair.
I do.
You're
I have
winning.
a lot of it. Thank God I had a lot of it because a lot of it came out. But yes, I have a ton of it.
Well, fantastic. Well, we are obviously happy to have you. And what we like to do on this program is actually explore a little bit more about before the acting, right? Before some of the properties that you've been attached to, because as we kind of talked about before this conversation started, Wikipedia doesn't really tell us a whole lot about, maybe some of your dreams and your aspirations and what the original plan might have been, right? So we'd love to know a little bit more about, about what the plan was, like what were you looking to do?
You mean for the acting altogether? Well, it's funny because like very few actors, I actually started really late in the game. I was 28 when I started a full-time acting career, and which is really old. I mean, some people are wrapping it up by 28, but I wasn't there yet. It was a sort of an epiphany that actually brought me into acting. I'd done a lot of stuff before this. I worked in the record industry. I was a record rep for Sony Music. I traveled around. I smoked dope with Joe Cocker. He may be a little old for you guys. Anybody in classic rock would know it. I spent time with Alice Cooper. Not the nicest guy in the world. Actually, you know what? He wasn't so bad, but his manager was a dick.
Ooh.
Very smart guy, though. Very smart. And scratch golfer, who you would never think that. He does a bit like Death Warmed Over. Oh, no. Alice Cooper, smart guy. Manager is a dick. And, very capable, but total scratch golfer, although he's the only guy that I think is allowed on the golf course in all black. Because he is Alice Cooper. Nobody's going to put a bright green color on him. Not till he's dead.
No.
So years before, where did I start? I think, did the whole graduating from high school, didn't want to go back to university. I moved to Whistler because I live in Vancouver. So I was a skier. And I, basically had sex with everyone, ate everything, drank everything, did everything I could to get my yeah-yeahs out in my 18, 19, 20. Then went to university, still wasn't for me. And then I got into radio. So that was really, I think, my first professional career other than, bartending and serving. And I was a lifty up in Whistler Mountain. I worked on the chairlifts. So I think my real springboard into my career was, I think it was 91 when I got my first job in radio. And I've been a radio announcer up until probably 2 or 3 years ago. And I just it's great because it worked with the acting. So I did talk radio. I did rock radio for 25 years, 30 years. I can sing every classic rock song known to man.
Nice.
And I still love radio. It was my first love. And it's tough because there's not that many stations in Vancouver. And I've kind of worked at all of them. Yeah. I'm older. It's a much younger audience now. I miss being on the air. I don't miss can I swear on this? Or we're not.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Okay. Go right ahead. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
absolutely.
The bullshit that goes with radio, but it's still my first love. If somebody gave me the magical, they said, what do you want to do? I would say, I want to do this. And I'll talk about that later. I'm training to become a chronic pain therapist because I struggled with it for 20 years and I want to help people get out of pain because I was in pain for 20 years. But, the radio, loved being on it, but there's no future in it, as we all know. There's no money in it. There's no stability. So I got out of that years ago. And then the acting, I think, I was working in radio. It was one of those, hated my job, didn't like my boyfriend. My dad just died. And when you have a whole bunch of shit that happens in your life, there's just an epiphany. You realize how important and how fleeting life is. And I went, you know what, Sam, what do you really want to do with your life? And I'm like, well, if I'm really going to chase what I want to do, I want to be a full-time actor. I'd always, you're good at it or you're not. And I'd always done it sort of non-professionally. So 28, I went, wow, really? I'm changing tunes at 28 because I'd already done a couple of about faces. I worked in, like I said, music, radio. And then I went, I was a weather girl for the local TV station. And then I went, no, fuck it, let's go after it. So I got a bartending job. I lied. I got a headshot and a resume, and my bravado, I just talked a good talk to all these agents in town. I didn't have a single credit. And I just said, look, you can send me out for the reporter roles for the first year. And then after that, I want you to send me out for real roles. And that was, by the time I was 29, I was kind of off and running. So acting was not first. It wasn't even second. It wasn't even third, but it was the one thing that I always knew if I wanted to do it, if I had a choice over what I would do. It's just daunting. How do you get into being an actor? It's so competitive. And, how do you get in to do that? You just got to jump in and do it.
I was gonna say, especially you almost made it sound like it was like a fallback plan, almost like it's the opposite of what you hear. Like, hey, I'm going to Hollywood, chase my dream, but I'm going to fall back at my dad's car dealership just in case that doesn't work out. So
exactly, yeah. You're right. Mine was reversed.
Cool. Yeah,
you're right. That's true. These were my careers, and it was like, what do you want to do? Okay, let's give this a go. Let's give it a lark. What can happen? What I can always go back to radio. I can always go back to something else. And then you know what? And then it worked because I have if you've seen me on TV, I have a very strong personality. I have a strong voice. I play head CIA like nobody's business. We used to call me tits in a suit or large and in charge. Like I've just, there's not that many women. Like you can't tell right now, but I clean up well. Put a suit on me. I've got great legs, nice boobs. You straighten this hair and you put some makeup on this face and I can kick some serious fucking ass. And that's what I did. Like the main characters that I was always hired for was head of the CIA, head of the FBI, large and in charge, head lawyer. I just, gun for hire. I was the tough guy. And that's why Supernatural was such a great gig because I got to be that tough person, but I got to be a mom and I got to have a gun and I got to be the badass. And that was such a great departure. And I think that was one of my first real departures from the head, large and in charge broad,
Yeah, well, I think that's really kind of a cool journey, though, because I have a soft spot for journalism, and I think Joe does a little bit too, because that was what I went to college for. I wrote for a newspaper for a while, and now we're making multimedia stuff weekly, so it feels kind of like we live in that soup, quite a bit. But to hear you start there, like working in broadcast and everything, and then shifting into acting. I'm curious how maybe working in front of the camera in that regard, how it prepped you for getting into, being a paid actor. Like what kind of lessons did you learn from broadcast that carried into, acting?
Ego. You're going to deal with a lot of ego and a lot of money, and put ego and money together. And it can be a winning and a real losing combination. It woke you up to like, wow, people like that really exist. I learned more about that than the actual technical side. I've got to think. I guess looking into a teleprompter, when you're a weather girl and you're doing this and you're looking and you're reading over a teleprompter. But no, because there's acting, you're never looking in the camera. No, I would say the two are not related at all. In fact, I'd say they're very different because one of them is a very forced, formal, you're giving information, whereas when you're acting, you're doing exactly the opposite. You're connecting with an emotion, you're connecting with a scene, you're having an emotional interaction with somebody and trying to, create reality out of something. Whereas weather girl, you're not realitying anything. You're not even trying. You're just trying to put your hand where the green screen, here's Canada. Oh, here we go. Okay. You got to match your hand to the, to what the map that you're looking at. And that's about it. I would say just the people, just the ego is pretty much it. And you run into, when performance base, when you're looking at people that are in front of a camera, in front of a microphone, in front of a whatever, when there's a performance, there's not a million people out there that can do it. So you're dealing with people that can get pretty in their own heads and kind of think their shit don't stink. Like kind of people that they've been, puffed up and, oh yes. And absolutely. Oh, what can I do for you? You run into the same kind of people. So I think I noticed in acting, some of the same attitude, and it was just, it's ego. You just go, okay, yeah. All right. This is what we're dealing with here. And that sounds like a negative. It's not necessarily a negative, but I'd say if there's a crossover, that's it.
Okay. I was actually wondering that too, when you mentioned that there's that ego in broadcasting, because I feel like that'd have to be there in Hollywood as well, or in, in that too. So how do you, like, obviously you do not have to name names of people who've given like you the ego like that, but like,
Yeah.
how do you work with people who do have that like plus size bravado?
It depends on who it is. Like, can I tell you kind of a crude story? Do you know who Faye Dunaway is?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Okay. She's a very famous actress. Yeah, you guys are young. She's a very famous actress. This is a typical story. Not, I shouldn't say this is a little above typical, but this is when you hear those stories about actors, and I know it's true because I was either the hair and makeup person or the costume guy. And true story, Faye Dunaway, because so she's very famous. And back when she was big, the Sophia Loren and Raquel Welch, when they were very divas, it was very diva-ish. And you couldn't get away with that now. But she, Faye Dunaway was up here and she had the reputation. Your reputation usually precedes you. People usually know about it. Oh, yeah, you know that somebody's a pain in the ass or somebody's not. Or well, you hear about them first. And she was it was Faye Dunaway. And she was talking to the director and she said, and he said, well, here, we went through, she wanted to have a say in everything that she did. So they were showing her costumes and she said, yes, no, no, no. And then she looked at the final dress for the final scene. She said, I'm not wearing that. And he said, no, actually, he goes, actually, you know what, Faye, I got to say, I think he was also the writer. He said, this dress is actually very specific to the scene. We actually need the dress. And she said, I'm not wearing that dress. And he said, well, we can talk about it, but no, do me a favor here. And he was very nice about it. And I think for that final scene, they put the dress in her room and he said, put it in her fucking room. She's wearing it. They were making her, giving her a huge amount of money for this. She'd already been a pain in the ass. And so they put it in her room. She got to her room and in lieu of her somewhat professionalism and to voice her displeasure, she took a shit on the dress.
Oh my God.
She literally defecated on and that was her basically saying, I'm a big star and I don't have to wear this. And God love the director. The costume guy was like, I'm not dealing with this. Director said, send it out to be dry cleaned and put it back in her room. And I give them all credit because she wore it in the end. They did, literally. But I only say that because that can be the height of it. I don't think it gets much worse than that. And you get everything in between. You can get people who are just having a bad day and they snap at you. You can get, you got to remember that if you're a lead on a show and you're working a lot, you're doing 16-hour days, you're in every fucking scene. People are poking and prodding. Makeup is coming, at you. Like everybody's coming at you all the time. The scripter is saying, yeah, you put the instead of and. Meanwhile, the hair and makeup are trying to get in to fix you because everybody's trying to do their job. Everybody's rushing around you and you don't get a second. You're feeling you're pulled in many different directions. And when you do that for 16 hours a day for 2 months, 3 months, 5 months, even a couple of weeks, it's very hard to stay really, thank you very much. Thanks very much, guys. Now, some people carry it off. The old British actors they're just decent people, like the Helen Mirrens and the people that have been around a long time. They're always the kindest people and absolutely well behaved and lovely and grateful. And they're just such lovely, easy people to work with. But it's usually the Americans and Canadians, the North Americans that can get a bit of an attitude. And I won't even tell you the story, but I worked on a movie with the daughter of a very famous Charlie's Angel. I'll say that. She's one of the Charlie's Angels from one of the original Charlie's Angels. And I don't think she had an easy life. I think she, was raised by nannies while her parents were out partying all the time. That's what they did back in the 70s, right? Like they just left you. They just, oh, it's fine. They, you don't need hugging and kissing or we know so much more about parenting now. So I think this poor gal anyway, she was a fucking handful. It was a horror movie. And that was one of the worst experiences I think I've ever had. And I was like, it even took my breath away. Stuff that was just such bad behavior. And the producers took me out for dinner once and said, these two young guys, and said, what do we do? And I turned to them after a couple of glasses of wine and said, you guys created this. Oh, what do you mean? What do you mean? And I'm like, you know what? And here's my point to this. Nobody's born like that. Somebody didn't say no to them their whole life and they somehow got it. And it's almost not their fault. Like it is, but it isn't. When somebody behaves badly one time, then 3 times, then 5 times, when nobody has said, that's not okay. They get it in their own head. They actually, this self-fulfilling prophecy that they're this, they don't know that nobody's saying no. They don't know that people aren't talking behind their back. They're buying their own bullshit. So when nobody says no to you, 20 times, you buy into it and you're just like, oh, I can just snap my fingers. And you don't realize that attitude that you're now portraying because you've gotten used to getting your own way on everything. And I think there's a lot of that out there. Like, I really do. I think you've had 2 series. You were a rock star. You won an award. And they really do treat you like gold as an actor because you are important. Like, if you get pissed off and walk off, it's worth so much. Every minute is worth so much money when you're shooting that they got to keep their actors happy. Yeah. You know what I mean? I've seen way too many actors hide, and they don't like something. They'll just sit in their, trailer. Oh, they're in their trailer, and it's that's done a lot. Oh, they're in their they're still in their trailer, and it's a little harumph. It's a little no. I'm boycotting. I'm not coming in there on time. Like, they can stick it to the producers, right? Like I said, every minute is worth so much money. So you want to keep your actors happy because they'll show up on time and they won't be diva, or they'll be less diva-esque. Some are just always going to be a pain in the ass, but keep them happy and you won't lose money. So they're handled with kid gloves so much that they just get used to it. And then they turn into assholes, or they can, not all of them. Some of them.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's true though. I mean, I would, Joe is a teacher. He obviously knows how upbringing can impact a child's attitude.
Yeah. You can very easily spot the children who've never been told no by someone before.
Exactly. That must be really difficult. That must be so tough as a teacher, because when I was a kid, you could smack a kid around in class, and kind of did. You threw stuff. You can't do anything anymore. Kids have a lot more. They have cell phones and all that stuff. So yes.
I was going to say, kids back then took hits like NFL quarterbacks, and they just went home. And that's just how it went. Yeah. My dad used to take his military boot, and those things are like serrated on the bottom. Okay?
Yes, they are.
So when someone uses the term "your ass is going to turn into hamburger," like, I know what that's actually like. I mean, it's a real thing, but
it is a real thing. I'm getting the wooden spoon. She really would get the wooden spoon, or she'd chase us.
Oh my gosh.
Running for half shoe and running after us, going for the shoe on her foot like a sandal. And we were just, it didn't even faze you. We got spanked everywhere all the time. You're left alone for days at a time. They don't do that anymore. But back then, I mean, growing up back then, it was the Wild West, right? You left on your bike in the morning and you came back at 8:00 at night, and you had blood on your knees and hair out and ripped shirts. And parents said,
do I look suspicious?
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Well, I love that we kind of talked about some of the rigors and experiences that you've gone through, because this is not so much about acting, but this does kind of call back to what you mentioned about being a radio announcer. And I've had a chance to follow your YouTube, for a few years now. And one thing that I focused on, okay, this isn't meant to embarrass you, but I remember how you put up a very heartfelt video about when you were actually fired from being a radio announcer, and how much that changed you. And I don't want to, obviously we don't want to relive every moment of it, but I do want to ask you, how did you figure out managing that recovery process, from that happening to you?
You know what? This is why, and the YouTube he's talking about is I do this little thing. So here's the thing, and that's my shtick. I love, and that's why I don't know that I'll never leave the acting, but I'm going into chronic pain therapy because the connection with the human being is way more important to me than acting. I think that, and I've always had this, connecting with other people is so much more important. I used to, because of the radio and being an actor, I've gone around and I've emceed large telethons and stuff that's giving back, and it's about humanity. And I always got way more of a buzz out of connecting with other people than I ever have about the acting or being a radio announcer or working in the music industry. And sometimes you just know what you're good at, and what gives you real buzz, makes your heart hum. And connecting with people and talking about my life in the hopes of helping somebody else has always been my jam. So I started to do this at conventions with Supernatural, as I started to talk to people. And when you connect with people, and when Supernatural fans are often very different, they're kind of an alternative fan. Some of them are very geeky, and that, they're quiet, and people that are attracted to sci-fi are a very different breed. And so for me to be able to stand on stage and say, let your freak flag fly, man, be who you are. Don't ever hold back. Like, I noticed that I loved that because I had people connect with me and say, thank you. And it was nice to hear that you had a hard time in life too. So I knew that I would always share my hard moments in life because I really am an open book. If you haven't figured that out by now, I wear my heart on my sleeve. I will talk about anything and everything. I don't hold back because I think that our experiences, especially the challenges in life, if you can share that and laugh about it, it helps somebody else. So I started to do, so here's the thing, because I can talk very openly about my hard knocks in life, very openly. And if they can help somebody else, so I get a lot of people that respond to them. So I have no problem talking about getting fired, getting dumped. My childhood sucked. Like, I had horrible parents. It was very traumatic. I went through hell, like, growing up, feeling not good enough, feeling hated, all that stuff. I know that my talking about it can reach out to other people. So when I started to do, so here's the thing. I mean, one of them was I lost my tooth. I showed people, I mean, you should see, when you take a tooth out of somebody's, you don't realize how important your teeth are when you present until you take one away. I had a flipper. This is an implant. I knocked it out when I was 10, and I had to go for a couple of weeks. They had to take it out. It was obsessed. So they had to put a thing in, and I had to have a little thing in there for a couple of weeks. It was fake and it kept coming out. So once in a while I would just take it out. And I remember being in my car. I just take it out because I didn't want, it's like a retainer. I don't want to deal with it. And you turn around and people, smile at you. And then you go to smile and you forget that you're missing a tooth. And it's this people go roll up their window, lock their door, drive off. And I'm like, what? And I'm like, oh my God, you don't realize how important your teeth are until you take one of those front teeth away. And then you are looked at completely different. So I talked about my front tooth. I talked about being fat. Like, I talk about the things that other people are scared to talk about because I'm not scared to talk about them. And losing it, getting fired is a horrible experience, especially if you have a low opinion of yourself. If you don't have a really strong confidence. I mean, since then you build confidence as you go in life. But I remember it being incredibly hard, and it was very public, and it was shitty. It really was a horrible experience. But what you learn by that is we're going to have these experiences in life. We're going to have those hard knocks. No one's getting out of here alive, as I think my dad used to say. Like, we're all going with bumps and bruises, and it wouldn't be life if you didn't. But it's now how you take those moments and use them to your advantage. I mean, all the great scientists of the world said failure means nothing. Failure is just a motivator to get on and do something. You've learned something about your life. Now take that lesson and move forward, and don't repeat the same thing that you did before, or do things differently, or, big learn. Sometimes a hard learn, sometimes a good learn. Sometimes it's a gift. The things that my chronic pain that I have for 20 years was an absolute gift in my life, because now I'm going to help other people. So I think you've got to look at that stuff as they're just little bumps in the road along the way of life. And you need a bunch of bumps to appreciate the good stuff that happens. But yeah, it was hard. But talking about it was great because that's cathartic for me. And then it helps somebody else out. Somebody's had a shitty day. Somebody says, hey, I just saw an actor from Supernatural talking about getting fired on this YouTube. And then they go, fuck, if she can talk about it and laugh about it, then why can't I? And that's kind of the point.
And I love that it's a community at that point, because when I remember seeing one of your videos a couple of years ago, I saw in the comments that somebody said it's not your fault if somebody doesn't see your potential. Yeah. And I saw that and I went, I didn't know I needed to hear that today. Holy shit.
You know what? And that's why I do on Twitter and Instagram. I had fallen apart recently because I'm in school and I'm busy, but I normally do a Super Soul Sunday, hashtag Super Soul Sunday, and I will always post those. And my intention for it is to get that exact response. So, and I'll get them back. You have no idea how much I needed to read this today, or thank you, I'm not alone. I think my big motivation for everything, if I had a mission statement, is to help people feel like they're not alone. That would be my bottom line. That's why I do the stuff that I do.
Yes, absolutely. I think it's really important because some people forget. I forgot myself. I network with a lot of like video game streamers, and a lot of video game streamers focus on mental health. And so I was talking to one of these streamers one day, and they said, "Hey, did you know that June was like Men's Mental Health Month?" And I went, "Wait, what?" I'm like,
"What? That's a
no,
thing?"
I'm still used to having my shampoo and conditioner in the same bottle. I didn't even know we had a month for mental health. You
that's
kidding
great.
me?
Any guy using conditioner, what's wrong with you? girly man.
You know what? When I did have hair, I loved using conditioner. I
Oh,
loved
yeah.
the way the wind caught my hair just right. I mean, trust me, there was a time. There was a civilization up here.
He had
Well, your
T-tops on
partner
that
here is
Camaro.
making up for it. Your partner here is making up for it. You have a full head of hair, like a crazy head of hair. For a guy, absolutely.
I'm going to knock on wood. That's one of my few genetic jackpots I've hit so far, is that this doesn't seem to be going anywhere. And
no, and I think you'd be going by now. Yeah, I think if you were going to lose it, I think you're solid. I think you're going to be just fine.
Yes.
Well,
yes.
To bounce back to acting for a moment here, we've asked this question a couple times because we've had other artists on the show who have done extensive voiceover, jumped over to live action, and they've kind of found niches that they like to be within. But you have a very diverse portfolio that you've got over your career, and a lot of that in the beginning was animation, which I thought was really cool that you were in that space. So I want to know, did you bring physicality to your performance in the booth? Do you have a different preparation style that you do for that versus, movies and TV?
I didn't have a preparation style, but you do and I think the voice stuff, especially the voice animation, that was a springboard from radio. So that was even before I was an actor. I think I was doing that stuff. I'm pretty sure. What's Gundam Wing? I still get people that talk about Gundam Wing. I guess it's some cult following of Gundam Wing, but I'll still get that at conventions. At every convention I do, there's at least 5 people that go, Sally Poe. And I'm like, oh my God. I think that was one of the first things I ever did.
Yeah.
And they'll bring me they'll bring me Gundam Wing stuff to sign. And I'm like, holy shit. I don't even know if it's still going, but it went for a long time.
No.
And I think, sorry. I think in answer to your question, I think you kind of had to, and with a lot of that, you had to work at matching the lips. So you would kind of you'd look, if they ran video, you'd look ridiculous because you had to do a lot of this. I don't think pre-preparation. I think the film stuff is pre-prep because it's more visual than it is even audio, right? So you definitely have to focus on a couple of different things when you're in front of the camera. Plus, in front of the camera, don't forget, you have to, it's not just and roll and go. You've got to hit marks. You've got a camera. You've got an eye line. Sometimes they take the actor away and you have a weird eye line and you have to look over here when it's not really there. So when you're on the microphone doing anime, when you're just doing voice, all you have to focus on is the voice. Oh, sometimes I should say that you're matching the lips, but on Japanimation, which is what we called it, you can't even really match it because it's Japanese. And I'm like, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, sometimes you just gave up. They're like, that's not even going to fit. You're saying yes. And the lips went like this.
Yeah.
I don't know how many yes, how you say yes in Japanese. But so film, you have to, you're focused on, like I said, you got hair and makeup coming, you got a lot of things going on. But if you're in a booth voicing something, you're kind of on your own and you've got your own stuff going on. So it's a lot of this. When you see the pro guys that do it, they've got, and they're doing all that stuff. So it's very different.
Yeah, I was going to say, I would be one of the 5 people bringing a picture of Sally Poe to sign at a convention because.
Oh, really?
Oh, definitely. Gundam is a huge part of my life. I have won contests building models of Gundams and painting them.
Oh my God. So what is it about that show that was so big? Is it because it was one of the first of its kind?
Oh,
there was not an animation fan.
Oh yeah, there was nothing like Gundam in the United States before that, because before that you'd have like Power Ranger-esque robots where they'd be fighting aliens and doing all this stuff. But this was a war story. This was human and human emotion clashing with each other, where you see that in war, lines are blurry between good and bad on both sides and what they're doing. And you've got people caught up in it who are just trying to do the right thing by themselves. And this is where I would love to talk to you about Sally Poe, because when it comes to the characters on the show, so many of the big ones are the ones who are in the mechs, and they're the easy ones to kind of fall in love with. You voice one of the few characters who, one, commands respect automatically whenever she's in a scene, and she never steps foot in a robot. So this is something where I almost want to know, what did you obviously there's a script and you've got to match the best you can with a language barrier with it. But is there anything that you think you did with your voice to Sally Poe that made her the amazing character that she is?
Yeah, I put a lot of weight behind it. Like she was very tough. Like the thing about audio versus visual, you have a bunch of different mediums, right? You have audio, you have everything. With that, you really have to project with your voice because it's all about the voice. You know, when you're acting in a scene, it's your hair and your makeup and your clothes and the lighting so when it's just kind of your voice, you really have to speak with all parts of you. You have to put all of your energy into that voice. So yeah, you go way bigger. Like Sally Poe was a very tough, I'm trying to remember her, a very tough, very strong character that I'd be hoarse when I came out of
I can imagine
with that. Yeah, those were draining because she had a lot of power, and you had to put all of that power into one medium, which was your vocal cords. And it was hard. It was hard, but that was my first. I think it was my first real animation, and I still hear about it today. I don't know how long it went on for, but it must have gone on for a while. I think it morphed all kinds of different ways.
Well, yeah, it has. It's got 50 episodes and a movie. I mean, because like Gundam as a thing has been going on since 1979. So it's been going on. Yeah, and there's still new series coming out. Like they just finished the newest one. Honestly, like 2 or 3 weeks ago, just wrapped up with its air date. So Gundam is huge in the East, and it's spread here so well. And it's because of your series. And
I will take credit for that. I'm going to take credit for that.
Take huge credit. And I will actually stand by Endless Waltz as Endless Waltz is the best Gundam movie made out of all the ones I've seen so far. Like in terms of animation, story, everything, like it has it all, and it wraps up the series storylines so well. So like, yes, kudos to you and the amazing work you did on that show and movie.
Oh, I'm so glad to hear that because I haven't heard that in so long. Other than, like I said, the odd person that comes up and goes Sally Poe at a convention. I haven't talked about Sally Poe in ages. That was that was one of my first gigs a long time ago.
Yeah,
I think what Joe's trying to say is that I was going to say if Joe and Sally Poe were on a dating app, he likely would have matched by now. I think that's what he's trying to say.
Slight crush.
Crush on Sally Poe. Well, Sally Poe had her shit together, man.
She did. She literally took like the worst character on the show, like the biggest womanizer and honestly kind of piece of shit on that show, and made him respect her immediately when she did things. So yeah, Sally Poe, incredible.
Aw, that's so sweet. Thank you for saying that. I've never had this long of a conversation about Sally Poe. So I'm glad. I'm glad that somebody out there. I'm glad to know that there really are people that are Gundam fans because I see them at conventions and you don't get a ton of time with the fans. So you're like, Sally Poe, and then you're kind of like, where are you from? And then they're gone, and then you're like, wow, that was a long time ago. Oh, hi. Okay, yeah. Hey, what's your name? You know what I mean? Like, it's crazy.
I mean, we did look at some of the properties that we experienced that you were part of. And one of the questions that kind of came out of shortly after some of this animation work was that you actually worked with the earlier version of Telltale Games with the CSI video games.
Yeah, that's right.
So I was curious because I had played those games. Now, I think you do a great job with your voice, but the mechanics of those CSI games were kind of hard to get through. And Joe knows the journey I went through on that one.
Yes. Oh, really?
But yes, but like I thought the voice acting was great. The games themselves do have some really tough mechanics to kind of get through. And we're not here to talk about them. But what I wanted to ask you about was the gap in between working with Telltale Games, because obviously you were part of the new Tales from the Borderlands that we kind of talked about a little bit before we recorded. But I guess, was there a reason for that gap in between working with that studio?
No, I don't think so. I think EA, like a lot of the gaming stuff is done in Vancouver. I just happen to live here. And so I think, no, it wasn't by design. It wasn't intentionally. But I think that when you get really busy in film and then, a video game will come and say, hey, is she available? And your agent, it's their job to kind of go, well, she's doing this, this, and this. And they're like, well, they need parameters. We need 3 of her days and we don't know if they're Monday, Wednesday, or Friday. And your agent goes, well, sorry guys, but she's on this, making this amount of money. Like, you just become somewhat unavailable just because their schedule is moving around. And this isn't even my doing. I'm not even part of it. They'll just say, hey, EA's got a game they're auditioning for, but just so you know, this is their guarantee, and you can't do any other games, and you can't do any of this, and you can't do any of that. And here's your window of time, and they need you for all of those, weeks. And I'm like, well, and that's when your agent goes, no, it's not worth it. Like we just can't hold her. Like they won't pay you for all that time, but they'll say, we want first right of refusal, meaning here's our shooting. And because it moves around so much, we're not going to share her with another show. Like stuff like that would happen. It's not just EA, it's other games too. And I understand their schedule. I had a really hard time doing new Tales from the Borderlands. Like I think by the end they hated me, the production team, because it was just, and it was really my agent. It wasn't me, but it was, it's just a different animal, right? So my agent would be like, you can't have her Monday, Wednesday. And they're like, and they were really disorganized. So they were like, well, we need Sam for this and this. And she's like, well, I'm going to have to cancel her on that. So you're going to have to pay her this. And like, I end up probably looking like a real bitch to the new to the production team, only because it's hard to do both. So I would say if there's a gap, it's only because I was working a lot. And it's much as you love the games, they don't pay the same. As when you're an actor, you want to get in front of a camera. That's your number one priority. So when a game comes up and says, hey, we'd like to hire Sam, but here's the money. And we need her to guarantee that she's not going to take anything on in that window. And my agent's like, she won't do that. Or my agent's like, I won't let her do that. And my agent's like, I won't let you do that. She'll check with me and go, hey, so-and-so called about a game. Are you open to being available? They can only guarantee you 3 days, but you have to be available for 3 weeks. And I'm like, no, I'm not. Even a TV show, if they did that, I wouldn't do that. So, so that's the only reason for that. I did a couple of other ones. Like I did some that are not on my IMDb, like a friend of mine and I both did. And I know you talk about the logistics. Don't forget, didn't we shoot those a long time ago when they hadn't figured out the mechanics of it? Like now gaming was almost real life.
It's true.
Yeah. Back then it wasn't quite Pong, which is what we had when I was a fucking tank. Like we had Tank. You had two, and it went like this, and it like trust me, you guys would have gone bananas. You would have hated Tank. But that was the only thing we had when I was a kid. Tank and Pong, where you just had a bat that went. You know how Pong went, right?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Like this Pac-Man was cutting edge when I was younger. So it's changed a great deal. But a friend of mine and I did like a snowboarding one. And I did the voice of one player. No way! No way! And you had to record no way like 8 different times.
Oh my God.
Yeah, you had all this dialogue. You go and I did this at EA. If you've ever been to these gaming houses, they're palatial because these people that work on these games work like hitting a deadline. They're in there 22 hours. There's fields, there's gyms, there's massages, there's like, it's a whole world. The EA building is this, it's like a planet. It's its own because they don't want them to leave, right? Oh, it's insane. You should see, you guys should make an appointment to go in. If you're ever in Vancouver, come and see, like make an appointment, say, hey, this is what we do. I'm sure somebody would show you. I could hook you up with a friend of mine, but he just left. And it's mind-boggling the amount of money and shit that goes on. So they must record so many games. So you go in there and you record for a couple of days, and it's the script is you got to say something 15 ways, and then they plug it into the player. Player goes this way. And a friend of mine did the other one. So we said that we were going to get the game and I was going to play with her voice. I was going to play her character and she was going to play mine. We never did that, but how much fun that would have been. I don't even know where that game is.
Now, was that SSX on tour? I know, weren't you in a couple of the SSX like snowboarding games, or was it just that one?
I don't know. It was so long ago now. But it was an EA game and it was a big one. And I know that, it was probably a couple of them. I don't know what it was called. You get the paycheck. You roll in. Hi, how are you doing? Yeah, come on down. Here's your scripts. Great, thanks very much. Okay, bye. And you don't even know. And your check shows up.
Take off your sunglasses.
You know what I mean? You guys know more about that stuff than I do.
Yeah. Hey, we doing this? Okay, come on. Okay. I got stuff. I got to be somewhere. Come on.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, okay. Hey, stop that. Pause. Hey, stop that. Pause. And you literally, they'll give you a line and they'll just say, 10 takes, 3, 2, 1. And you just go, and that's stuff I actually love.
Rapid fire.
Fucking rapid fire is right. Split second between them. That stuff I love though. That stuff I can do really well. So they knew that they could get that out of me really fast. Hey, what are you doing? Hey, what are you doing? you know, and then you rattled like 10 of them off totally differently. And they're like, fuck yeah. Some actors, they'd have to go, okay, can I get 10 more? But can you do this? We just knew how to do it. You just rolled in and barked it out.
Now, Joe, I'm not saying that because you're a teacher and I'm a parent that we could do voice acting, but I feel like I do repeat the same things 10 times in a row. Maybe I should look into this.
Yep.
You know what?
Well, maybe that's the thing. Maybe we should start just varying how we say it 10 times in a row.
There you go.
Really
that's it. That's the impact.
You could do that. You know what I will tell you? It's so funny. I've got a bunch of friends of mine. And they always come to your friends always come to you when their kid or their family or whoever wants to, or they, it was, you know, somebody told me I have a really good voice. So I was thinking about getting into voice acting or whatever. And they always come to you. Like, my daughter wants, will you talk to her? And I'm like, sure, but I'll tell her not to do it. And they're like, what? And I'm like, it's a really hard thing. But the voice stuff is, the voice market, especially up here, is incredibly competitive. And I always say to anybody who's my age and getting into it, I wouldn't do it now. And they're like, what do you mean? And I'm like, it is so incredibly competitive. And most markets have, like Vancouver, for the animation, there's probably 50 guys that you shoot all of it. But the top, I would say there's probably 15 to 18 guys that do 90% of the work. They just do. And they can change their voice. Like, these are guys, that's all they do. A guy named Scott McNeil, who I've been naked with in a show called The Ranch, oddly enough. And he's one of these professional voice actors that can do any voice and every voice. You'd never know. Lee Tokar, same thing. These are guys that do this. Peter Kalamis. These are all guys that do professional animation voices. They're so vast and varied. You'd never know them from one show to the next. And they do 90% of the work. So it's so competitive. It's so competitive. And trying to get in, I don't even know how you'd get in now. Even young, I don't know how you'd get in now, especially not in the Vancouver market. And we have a huge voice market, huge. So I tell everybody, I'm like, you can make a demo tape, and they usually get scared away at that because that takes work and money and effort. And I just wanted to voice some commercials. I'm like, you got to do the demo. You got to just sit down. You know, like, it's a lot of work to get into it. And I'm like, it's going to be really hard to break into the market. So it's really hard.
I think that you and Joe need to exchange business cards, because he has also been trying to get naked with Scott McNeil, and he just hasn't worked out yet.
He played an Elvis. You know who Scott McNeil is?
Yeah.
Oh, do you? Oh, you do?
Yeah.
I don't know if you guys know these guys.
Yeah.
Okay, Scott McNeil is a buddy of mine because we've done a lot of voice stuff together. And on The Ranch, if you ever see The Ranch, and I'll give you a heads up now, you will see my boobs. They look horrible. Even they've got a boost. I'm doing something weird with a bustier, and they're flowing over. And they look horrible. Even my mother went, "Do not footnote me," because my mother used to say, whenever I've done a ton of nudity, but I have done a bit of it. Chris Isaak show, The Ranch, and my mother, if she ever saw it, she'd always say, "Footnote me, darling," meaning you got those great breasts and ass. They were better 20 years ago from me. So she always used to say, "Darling, you're very British, very British." She'd say, "You have to footnote me." So when she saw The Ranch and saw this bustier and what, she went, "Don't footnote me there. That's not, you didn't get that from me." Horrible. But Scott McNeil plays a Elvis impersonator because he's got the voice, right? They just got him in the hair.
Oh, yeah.
He was kind of this, and I had to give him a blowjob, and I put ice on my boobs to keep my nipples looking fantastic, and I had to lean down on his thighs. So these two ice cold nipples in his thighs, and he's like, "Oh my God, Jesus!" So how many errors? We both just walked. So he saw him when he showed up. I'm like, because we'd known each other professionally way before he showed up, and I'm like, "Hey, Scott." He's like, "Oh my God, Sam?" And I'm like, "Yeah." So I'm like, we're about to get naked together. So awkward at the beginning. And then he just said, "You want to just get naked?" So we both just took off our clothes and walked around the set. I think I sat in an apple box and ate a sandwich. You know, I didn't care. The crew are more uncomfortable than you are. And so we got over it pretty fast. But if you ever get The Ranch, there is the scene where I'm giving a guy a blowjob. That is Scott McNeil.
Oh my God.
Well, there we go. Between Scott McNeil and Frank Welker, they basically voiced my childhood. I mean, I don't know how much they would have worked together, but those two just did. They were in so much.
I don't recognize the other name. Who? Frank Welker?
Frank Welker, basically he's Fred in Scooby-Doo. He's Megatron.
Okay. Oh, that's, got it. Oh, yeah.
Ray in the Ghostbusters cartoon. He voiced the 80s. Like, that was all Frank Welker. It's actually harder to find something he wasn't in.
Really? So kind of like the Simpsons stuff. Who else would you know from the Vancouver market? Because like I said, they did so much of that stuff up here. Do you know any of the Dobson brothers? There's like three Dobsons. Brothers. They all did a lot of voice work, a lot of animation. Kirby Morrow, who has now died. Kirby Morrow died of a, I think it was an alcohol-related death. We're not quite sure what happened there. He did a lot of work. He would have worked as much as Scott McNeil did.
Okay.
I'm trying to think of all the other big names. Of course, I can't think of them now. But
I do remember him from, I think he was Cyclops from like X-Men, one of the X-Men series. I'm pretty sure Kirby Morrow was.
Kirby Morrow did a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
Him, Peter Kalamis, Lee Toker. Those guys are all big. Like if you look them up, you guaranteed you guys would definitely go, oh yeah, I know that. Oh yeah. You know them all. Like these guys have done, because a lot of it gets shot up in Vancouver. A lot of that stuff records up in Vancouver. And these guys, who is the guy who moved to the States? David Kay, but I think he might be more the announcer stuff than he does the actual voice. Okay. I'm trying to think who else. I'll think about it later, but I can't think of anybody else off the top of my head, but definitely Lee Toker. And Ian Corlett. Ian Corlett's another big name. And these are guys that work full-time all the time doing animation. So there's a big market for it, but it's really, there's a very few people that actually they hire to do them, because these guys are so good at doing a million voices. You'd never know. Brian Drummond is another one. Like I said, there's 4 Dobsons. Like all the 4 brothers do animation, do voice stuff. Must be very competitive at Christmas dinner. Must be hell. So that table, you got animation guys, though. You can never just talk to them. Like the one thing about Scott McNeil, he wears a cowboy hat everywhere he goes. He's got a look.
Yes.
The same thing was with Kirby Morrow. You can never just, because you'd see them at auditions and it was always a, oh, hello, how are you? Like they could never just talk to you like, hey, Sam, how's it going? You just knew walking into a room with animation guys, you were just like it was work. You just were like, here we go. Hey guys. And it was just like nobody, it's like they couldn't do it anymore. They'd lost their real voice.
Those Zoom calls had to be hell if you've ever had to do one.
I can't even imagine.
Well, we would not forgive ourselves, because Joe and I are both, of course, Supernatural fans. And my wife actually introduced me to Supernatural back when we first started dating. So I binged like the first 5 seasons on my own. And over the course of maybe like a month's time. So I became like an instant fan. But right away, like just the like Ellen's part in this series, in the early part, with her and her daughter and everything, I immediately kind of bonded with that family, right? Because I don't know if it's quite the same correlation, but being an army brat and then seeing how like the hunters live their lives, and they're used to people disappearing and just what happened to that person, whether it was tragedy or whether it was just life, whatever. Like just the idea of all these folks passing through like a joint location, sharing knowledge and doing all that. And your character's at the top of it, controlling it all, right? Like I thought that was just a really cool idea. Just the concept of like a Grand Central Station for hunters, right?
Very nomadic, but then it settled on that. Well, I think that was at the beginning of season 2. And I think the reason that was kind of a logistical thing, the show wasn't big at all. I didn't even know what I was auditioning for. I'm like, what's it called? Supernatural. I'm like, and I knew enough to know it was 2 hot guys from Texas. And I'm like, but I didn't, didn't really hit it big until, sort of into season 2 and 3. So season 1 was kind of unheard of. They just knew it was 2 hot dudes. And I had to watch a couple episodes of season 1, which I actually liked. I'm like, I don't want to watch this, but they said, look, before you, because I booked it, and they said, look, you're going to be a fairly regular role for the first little while. They want you to watch it. So I actually watched season 1. And I'm like, hey, this isn't bad. It had humor. It had rock and roll. It had a lot of great good looking guys to look at. They didn't take themselves too seriously. Like that show did well for a reason. It had all of these great pieces in it. But what they didn't have, it was very dude heavy. Season 1 was really, all they had was flashbacks of their mom and a couple of bad female characters. But what the writers and the producers had said is, we need to bring in a mother figure. And then, they brought my daughter in with me. They weren't sure if they were going to make her a love interest or a sister type and then they saw if the chemistry worked, and it kind of did. So they, so they brought us really in as to bring some feminine energy to the show. And the sad thing about it was, we were supposed to write all 3, me, Ash, and Alona, all the guy, Chad Lindbergh, all came in at the same time. When they brought in the Roadhouse, and they were about to sign the three of us and Jim Beaver to a contract. We were going to sign us up. But what happened is the WB, it wasn't the CW yet. And it was just flipping over. It used to be Warner Brothers, then it was the WB, and the CW was taking over. And the CW is notoriously a very young, hot Gossip Girl, Pretty Little Liars, all that stuff, like The Hills, like that. But, it was really young and really hot and good looking. That's what the CW was. And so when the WB, when they had it, they were just about to sign us. So we all got the roles. We were about to sign contracts. And just as the CW came in, and it was like their first day, they went, "Oh, what? You're signing?" And I was too old now. The CW saw me as too old for their regular. So I pen in hand, about to sign the contract, and the CW ripped that contract out from underneath, I think, me and Jim Beaver, because they all of a sudden went, "Well, they're not our demographic. She's way too old." And I'm like, hang on a second. I'm literally 8 years older than Alona, the girl, I'm playing the mother of a girl who's in real life 8 years younger than me, but no. So we were going to be in way more episodes, but it just, I know it's film. This is why film is hard. This is why I tell my friends, my daughter wants to become an actor. What would you tell them? Don't do it. Well, I'm not going to have her talk to you. I'm like, no, because that's what I'm going to tell her. Don't get an education. Yeah. The one thing that I have that I see my friends do, and I'm lucky because I had a lot of other careers first, and I can go off and do other things. But I have friends that put all their eggs in one basket, and all they've ever done is been an actor. And I don't know if you guys know anything about, there's a strike going on right now.
Yeah.
And it's ugly, ugly, ugly. And it's written, like, there's a quote from a producer saying, "We're going to wait it out." They shouldn't have gone on, they went on the record. They didn't use their name. That they basically went on the record with the media saying, "We're going to wait out the writers and the actors because they're going to start losing their apartments. They're going to start losing their homes. They're going to start losing everything." They actually went on record as saying that and saying, "Look, it's a necessary evil. We can wait. We don't care. They're making money." Like Netflix, and some of them have less shows to play. They'll just keep replaying. But Netflix, the producers don't care because they've got tons of shit. They'll just replay. We're going to do a, what are those Amazon, The Great Amazing Race, playing from the beginning. Like, they've got all this content that they can just keep playing. People aren't going to run out of shit to watch. There's going to be no pressure. So they're just going to wait it out until until the writers and the actors start losing everything and they come begging back for their jobs. That's how horrible this business is. It's not. And I've got a friend of mine who's a writer in LA. I talked to her last night and I'm like, "How's it going?" She's kind of retired now. So she's made her money. She's fine. She still has to go on the picket line every day, but she's like, there are people that are going to lose everything. And they're going to have to go take jobs in other businesses and become house painters and, work in restaurants and be gardeners and whatever. Like, it's a very, very tough industry. And it's a horrible thing to see. And I'm kind of glad that, like, it's affecting Vancouver too, very much so. I talked to my agent last night. And I'm like, "How's it going?" She's like, "I'm going to have to lay off people. We're going to close the office." I mean, people started working out of the home anyway.
Oh, yes,
but
of course. Yeah.
She's like, "We don't use the office as much." But she said, "I'm going to have to lay off 2 people. The rest of us," she said, "Sam, there's 5 shows shooting in Vancouver right now because they stopped it before the strike. They didn't start anything, so they didn't have to sit on it. So the shows didn't start for a long time before because they knew this was coming. And now it's going to be the winter time before people go back to work again. And no one's going to win from this. Like, except for the networks. It's really horrible. So when I got sick with chronic pain, and I realized when I found out what it was after struggling for 19 years, I realized this is sometimes you take a calling. Sometimes you just know what you're meant to be doing. I knew I was meant to be doing radio. And then I knew that I was going to leave the acting community. I didn't know how I was going to do it. And when I got sick and I found out a way that what it is, I won't go into the details, but 90% of chronic pain is curable overnight with nothing more than a pen and a piece of paper, 90 to 95% of it. And when I learned that, I realized the world has to know. Like Howard Stern, he had healed from the same thing. It's called mind-body syndrome. 90 to 95% of chronic pain falls under that umbrella. And what people don't realize is they're going to see physios, they're spending all this money. People are killing themselves. I almost killed myself. I almost took myself out of the game because I struggled so badly. And what it is it's actually an emotional and a a psychological and a stress related. There's actually nothing wrong with your body, but there's something going on in your body to distract you from some repressed emotions. It's a long story. But when I found out that the way out of this illness doesn't even cost you a thing. You have to do a little bit of mental emotional work. You got to do a little bit of writing, a little creative exercise, creating writing exercise for 20 minutes a night for a couple of months. I got myself out of chronic pain. I had it for 20 years. And when I finally found out what it was and addressed it, I was out of it within a couple of months. And I realized my job now in this world is to help other people who struggle with chronic pain. I've started my social media. It's called the Chronic Pain Connection, if I'm going to give it a little buzz. But I'm just starting to build that now. I'm still in school. Oh, yeah. I'm starting to build that. I'm just starting to put that together now. I'm not even drawing anybody's attention to that yet because I'm not even finished school. But I'm getting my therapist license. And then a year from now, I'll probably be a full-on chronic pain coach and therapist because there's so much of a need for this. There's so many people like you guys. I guarantee you guys will know people struggling with chronic pain, fibromyalgia, tinnitus, carpal tunnel, knee pain, neck pain, any kind of back pain, migraines. These are all completely fucking fixable because the problem is not your body. The pain is very real, but the solution is not in your body. And when I found that out, so I'm lucky that I'm stepping away from the acting thing. I won't leave it all together, but it's not going to be my primary income because I have friends that this is all they've ever done. And they're now looking down the barrel of their kids. Their kids are going to high school. They are looking, how are they going to pay their mortgage? How are they going to pay their rent? Some people have to sell their houses. They have to rent. The kids, they're trying to put them through school. They don't have money. It's a very, very tough industry to be in. The voice is different. But the money's not the same.
Yeah.
It's not actors, and that's all they've ever done. And there's an ego that comes with acting, right? It's like, well, why don't you guys go get a job? I talked to an actor the other day. I'm like, well, I did stuff on the side. I did voice and I did, I did some set deck, and I started as a bartender when I first went, and I turned to the actor. I said, you could work. And he's like, I'm sorry, I'm an actor. I don't do regular work. And I'm like, oh, well, fuck you.
Oh, jeez.
That's going to have to be a reality. So it's very hierarchical. Oh, yeah. When some people would seem, they're like, oh, you're a bartender. Oh, honey, hard times. And I'm like, fuck off. And I was working. I think I was shooting Supernatural and working at Joe Forte's downtown at the time because, I wanted to have a lot of money and I liked being busy. Like when you're working as an actor, 30 days a year is considered a lot of work. So what are you doing with the other, 265, 230 to 245, whatever it was. I never wanted to sit around. So I always had other gigs on the go. I wasn't beyond doing work, any kind of work. But a lot of actors, it's very, ooh, you're doing what? Oh, she's a bartender. You know what I mean? And it was just like, you guys are assholes. Like, stop being so snotty. Yeah. But it's a snotty business. It can be a very snotty business.
People got to eat. I'm not going to look down on any profession because I do truly believe that we need all professions. We actually did a show on the Dirty Jobs series.
I love the Dirty Jobs series,
dude.
Isn't it great?
Mike Rowe, is it Mike Rowe? Is he still? I mean, something's not going on. I love that show, and I loved him. I would have married him sight unseen.
I think it's back on. Like they have new episodes.
It's back. It's back. Yeah,
back. Is Mike Rowe doing it? He must look older now. He was
still Mike Rowe.
He was so good at that job. He was so funny. I don't know if he's a nice guy. I hope he's one of those people that you go,
I hope so
if he's
too.
Not a nice guy, I don't want to know about it because you have such a buildup in your head of someone. And then, have you guys ever met someone that you had a great buildup and then you met them and went, I wish I never met them. Like something about their personality, or they were assholes, or they were standoffish, or they were shitty, and you just went, I wish I'd never met them so that I could keep my vision of them in my head.
I met Dan Aykroyd a few years ago, and he's one of my favorite actors. But for me, like when I met him, I knew why he wore like the shades, and like, he's on the spectrum. So he's not always the most personable. Yeah. And so I kind of knew what I was getting into, but when I got there, it's like smile and wave. And you're like, okay, kind of what you talked about before. It's like, how was this his 16-hour day? Right.
Yeah.
So like for me, I was like, I'm going to temper myself on this one. I'm going to, let's not judge, if I meet him like 5 more times, then I'll make an assessment.
Exactly. And it really is, what's crummy about being an actor is you can't have a bad day. Like you can meet somebody, and especially if it's with fans, if you've had a tough day, you got to put that back on, and you got to put your smile back on and be a kind person, because that will affect somebody's life, especially if you're at conventions. Convention by Sunday night, you are wiped out. You are tired. You've probably partied with the rest of the cast. You are talked out. You talk for 12 solid hours. Hi, hey, and you really got to pour it on. Like it's a marathon, or no, it's a sprint. It's an absolute sprint. So by the Sunday, you're wiped out, and people really want a piece of you, and they want to touch you, and they can I take up a Canadian? And it's very, and no matter what happens, you have to be a decent human being, because you may be that person that somebody has waited in line to come and see you, and if you're having a bad moment, if you're turning and snapping at someone, they see that and you ruin it for them for life. MASH was my big series when I was a kid. I watched a lot of MASH. I had Loretta Switch. She was my, oh my God moment. She was my fan moment. And I was at Comic-Con, Rhode Island, was it Rhode Island Comic-Con? Is that what it's called? One of the big Comic-Cons.
Yeah.
And and I was so excited. A friend of mine said, oh my God, do you know that Loretta Switch? And I tweeted to her, oh my God, fangirl, I'm going to come down and say hi. She's like, oh yeah, it's very sweetheart. Anyway, I got her at the end of her Sunday. She's 86. And she'd been pushed and prodded and pulled in every direction. And they said, okay, any actors who want to get a picture taken with Jamie Farr and Loretta Swit, come with us. And they hadn't told her and Jamie what was going on. So she was a bit flustered. And it was right before their last picture taking with fans. She's tired. He's tired. He's in a wheelchair. And I should have read the room, because I rolled in and I was the first person. So they had a bunch of the actors that were part of we were part of the guests at the Comic-Con. And they hadn't really told Loretta and Jamie that, hey, before you start with the attendees, we're just going to bring in a couple of these people that just want pictures with you guys. And they hadn't really. So she was like, what? Sorry, who, what? She just didn't know what was going on. Nobody explained it. And they were shooing me in already. They hadn't even explained it to her. And I roll in and I'm like, Sam, play it cool, play it cool, play it cool. But when you meet your hero, you can't even talk fast enough. You're like, oh my God. And I loved you. And this episode and so I come up and I kind of put my hands, where am I? Was I in the middle? I don't know where I was. I was, I guess I was in the middle. No, I wasn't in the middle. We were both above Jamie. And I put my hand on his wheelchair and I very lightly, just because I'm leaning next to her, I put my fingers very lightly just on her shoulder. And she was fed up and she just went and flung my arm off and turned around and went, are you ready? And I went, yeah. And the picture, if we had time, I'd run and grab it. I you know what? I would have framed it if it was, I went to my hotel and I literally slunk away. And it had nothing to do with the event. And she was just flustered. And I was the first one. And it was just circumstance. Yeah. I should have shut the fuck up though. I should have just gone, hi, and read that she was flustered and just did this. But I just was so excited. I was reading Meet My Hero and I just bounced up to her and overwhelmed her. And, she basically, and it was like a puppy that had been smacked by its owner that it loved. And I just I walked down the hall. And, they're like, wait, Kat. And I'm like, no, I'm just going to go ahead. I walked down the hall and I just took a moment to myself and I was like, did that really just happen? And you feel such shame and you feel your heart is just broken. And I was just like, oh my God. And I went to the bar in my hotel that night and I sat in the bar and there was fans there and I took my makeup off. I put my glasses on. I put my hair up. I didn't want to I just sat at the bar and I cried. My glasses filled up with tears. I kept having to take my glasses off and letting the tears fall because they literally built up under my glasses. The chick next to me finally just went, honey, and she's hearing some convention, not this. And she just said, I got to say, are you okay? Can I buy you a shot? And I just said, because I thought I was being really good about it. And I said, no. I said, you know what? I just had a really heartbreaking moment. I had to laugh at myself, but I was so upset. And the picture looks great. And it's such a bad memory for me that it's now sitting away in a bookshelf. And forever for me, I'll never watch MASH again. And just not that she's an asshole, just that I feel such shame over that whole event. It just ruined the whole thing for me. And I thought, God, shame on any actor that treats a fan like shit, because I know what it feels like to have to be shut down and you can't take that stuff back. I bet you she didn't even know what she did. I bet you because apparently she's lovely. And I was just like, wow, it was horrible. It was absolutely horrible. So I don't know how we got on with that, but
I've had nothing but good luck with it. Michael Rosenbaum is one of my favorites from Smallville, and I've actually met him at 2 cons, and they were 6 years apart from each other. And when I saw him at the second con, which was this year in Chicago, he remembered me from the first con, which was bizarre to me. It was like, there's no way this guy remembers me. He's like, yeah, it was like you talked about my podcast on the floor when I was looking for stuff. I'm like, holy crap. I thought maybe I've got one of those faces, but no, like it meant so much. And I've got a picture from him from that kind of my wall. He's still smiling at me over here. So that I thankfully have the opposite of that.
Good. I'm glad, because it's a horrible experience you don't want to go through. And I'm an actor, and so I would hope that I'd be less affected by it. But your hero's your hero. And when you build someone up in your head, what did somebody say? Somebody said, don't meet your heroes. It is a saying out there. And I think, who was I? I was with DJ Qualls, because I was there with DJ's a buddy of mine, and we were there Supernatural. And I think he said, how was your night last night? I didn't see you. I said, I just went to the bar and sat there. And I said, and I cried. And he said, oh my God, what happened? I told him, and he goes, don't meet your heroes, Sam. And he is a hero. Like, a lot of people really love him. So he's very good to the fans for that exact reason. He's a very decent, good-hearted guy. He's just a real normal guy. He's not a snob. There's snobs out there. He's not one of them. Actually, Supernatural, very fortunate. There's very few big attitude there. Very, very little. Everybody's very solid. And I think it trickles down from the top. Those 2 boys were the most decent human beings ever. And I think you wouldn't have lasted long, apart from Mark Shepard, who has a big attitude, but I think it's part of his shtick. Everybody else was so good on that show. They didn't have room for prima donna bullshit. So, and DJ just said, don't meet your heroes. Careful meeting your heroes, because you don't know how it's going to go.
Well, if it means anything, I'm not going to forget the conversation I just had with Sally Poe tonight. So this has been fantastic.
Yay! Good. We've come full circle. We have come full circle.
Yes. I was going to mirror the same thing.
Yes.
I knew that we were going to have a fun conversation, but your story is one that I am absolutely happy we got to experience, because you have a very unique journey coming into entertainment, but obviously broadcast and journalism and working that way. So we obviously are very thankful for your time and being able to experience this with you.
Yeah.
And I guess in conclusion, is there anything else that you'd like, to tell our listeners, anything that you would like to close up shop with?
Oh my God. You know what I learned? Chase your dreams. Has nothing to do with what I did, but I went after my career because I had a light bulb moment in my life, and I chased my dreams, and I'm glad that I did. So whatever you want to do, you can do it, especially in this world. You can do anything. Always chase your dreams. Always chase what you want to do, because how I decided to become an actor was, well, let's give it a go. And I can, it doesn't go forever. You at least can die trying, at least say that you tried. So take this life and do what you want with this life. And if you ever have chronic pain, look up Dr. John Sarno. Look up me. Look up anybody with chronic pain. Everybody's got a mother, a father, an uncle, a best friend who has chronic pain. Look up something called mind-body syndrome. 90 to 95% of chronic pain is completely 100% fixable. And be a decent person. Just be a decent person. I've been surrounded by ego and a lot of money, and that the two go hand in hand. Be a decent person in your life. Treat everybody the same, because what is it? You meet the people going up the scale, you'll meet the same person coming down. Always be a decent person. You can't go wrong with that. I think those are the 3 things that I would say to everyone. And I would tell that to everybody, not just your fans, but I would say that to everybody. 3 very good things to live by in life. Hey, I'm Sam Ferris, and until next time, keep on dissecting.